I'm canoeing around this quite big island here in Canada, and I just happened across a beaver dam. Look. Now you can tell it's a beaver dam because a lot of the sticks have been chewed at the end to enable the beavers to drag them down. You often see beaver dams, well I say often, occasionally you see beaver dams sort of in the middle of man-made lakes, but they don't need to here because this is where I am right now. It's not a swamp, but it looks like a swamp. Take a look at this. So the beavers already have all of the sort of natural environment that they need. But beavers are very adaptive, and if they didn't have what they wanted, they would adapt the environment to suit. So good on them. Beavers take control of their experience. All animals adapt to their environment. You know, harsh environment, kind environment, but animals adapt, and in a sense they find it easy to adapt to their environment because they only have one environment to adapt to, the environment. This is the environment. This is beautiful, but it's a harsh environment, but animals adapt. Human beings find it easy and hard. They find it easy to adapt to their environment because we're very ingenious and we have the power of imagination. But we also find it hard to adapt to environment because we have two environments. We have the external environment, so we have this external world. We adapt to the physical world, that's not too hard for us. But we also have to adapt to our internal world. And our internal world can be a lot harder to adapt to than nature, if you like. Because nature is pretty straightforward. It is what it is. This is probably what's called Canadian Shield rock. I've been on this island before over the years, and you know, it remains relatively unchanging. It is what it is. But our internal world, the human internal world, can be a much more difficult place to navigate. A, because it changes, but B, because it can be massively distorted and not really reflect what's actually going on in the external world. The internal world, the internal terrain, can be massively difficult to navigate. And the things that make it difficult to navigate are things like low self-esteem. This is a ubiquitous, it's like it's something that you almost have to have if you're thinking about, or if you're talking about depression. Low self-esteem. is almost always there. We have unrelenting standards, perfectionism or other kinds of high standards. We have faulty thinking, we have black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking. We have lots of different thinking styles that make it really hard to navigate. It's a bit like saying, this is a difficult terrain to navigate. I've got my little canoe here, my kayak. This is a difficult terrain to navigate, but with a compass and a map you could manage. But with relenting high standards, with faulty thinking, with perfectionism, with assumptions about how life is supposed to be that just don't work, it's like the map's distorted and you have lost your compass. So it can be really difficult to find your way. And finding your way means to have a reasonable experience. So the characteristics of depression really are a consequence of not having a map of where you need to go. To a large extent, we manage nature by shaping it. We're not awfully keen on leaving nature alone, really. If there's something that we want, that we take it, and our urban environment is entirely shaped to suit our own personal needs. We find it a lot more difficult to shape our internal world in the way that we want it to be. There are many self-help gurus that tell you, how you can create the internal world you want. And I find that that's just 50% of the story. Because there are the things that you want and there are the things that you don't want. And whilst it's easy to tell people the things that they want to hear about the things that they want, it's much more difficult to tell people how to get rid of the things that they don't want. And depression is an overabundance of the things that you don't want. And they block access to some degree to the things that you do want, because they're almost mirror images. So if you think about low self-esteem as an example, for instance, low self-esteem is feeling not good enough about yourself. So someone might say, well, you need to feel good about yourself. Yeah, but I don't. So how's that helpful? So human beings shape their physical environment. Unlike animals, which only have one environment to shape, which is their external environment, because they really don't have an internal environment that they're able to shape, human beings have two environments. We've got our external world and we've got our internal world. And we shape the internal world and we shape the external world. Now, the external world is basically made how we want it to be. The natural world like this doesn't have enough natural resources to sustain the human population, so we make our external world fit our purposes. Our internal world is to a large extent left to its own devices. I swear to you that people pay very little attention to what's going on in here until it becomes a problem. And then when it's a problem, well, it's a problem. But because they haven't paid any attention to it beforehand, it's difficult to know what to do to it. So look, you don't want to let a problem progress until it becomes a real problem and you really got to do something, extreme about it. We want to manage our internal landscape in the way that we manage our external landscape. If you have a lawn in your garden, you don't let it grow, you cut it, you keep it managed. Likewise, this environment is beautiful, but it's completely unmanaged and it's wild. It's lovely today, but in 4 or 5 months' time, it'll be covered in snow and ice. There are very few animals actually in this environment. There are some beaver, well, a few beaver, maybe the odd deer, raccoon, the odd skunk, and some squirrels. But actually it's relatively sparse because it's not an environment that sustains a lot of life. Anyway, depression is a result of the to a large extent, depression is a result of the mismanagement of your internal landscape. Now I say mismanagement, that sounds a bit deliberate, but basically the neglect of your internal landscape. And I'm going to just illustrate one important way that this happens. Human beings have this strong desire to belong, and that's fine. That keeps us sort of collegiate and communal, and it helps us to get along with others. But we make a terrible mistake. We think that belonging means that we have to be the same as everyone else. Now you and I, well, everybody really, is unique, right? There's never been anyone like you. There's never been anyone like me. There won't be anyone like you. There won't be anyone like me. Now, someone could look like me, but their internal landscape will be different. Someone could look like you, but their internal landscape will be different, so therefore they're not the same as you. You are unique, and that's a good thing. But when you're traveling towards depression, there's a real tendency to take your uniqueness and think of it as a deficit. You are unique, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. But if you think of your uniqueness as a bad thing, as a deficit, well then you're traveling towards depression and you're distorting your relationship to your internal landscape. So you have to say, okay, look, I am who I am, it's what it is. And it's okay to be you, it's okay to be who I am. You do not have to be the same as everyone else. Some people are taller, some people are shorter. Some people are more intelligent, some people are less intelligent, attractive, less attractive, more weight, less weight. Everyone's different. That's not the point. The point is to recognize you're different, to appreciate your uniqueness is who you are and is how you are, and to live the best life you can within your uniqueness. That's the opportunity that you have to have a great experience. You're never going to have a good experience by saying, I'm not as good as anyone else. I'm not as good as this person, I'm not as good as that person. And so look, here's the thing. The important point is to have the experience without being massively concerned about the outcome. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is that we do what we want to do because we want to do it, and we appreciate the doing of it as being the important thing, and we're less inclined to judge the results of what we do. So I would suggest to you that, let's say, you do a good job at work because you want to do a good job at work, not because you have to do a good job at work, otherwise you are a failure as a person. I go on this lake in a little boat and I do painting. I paint little pictures. Under no circumstances would I say that my pictures are objectively good, and yet I hang them on my wall at home. And I recognize the value is in the experience of painting the picture. When I first started to come to Canada, I wanted to interact with Canada because, you come to Canada, you stay in a house, you go to the shops, you look around the mall. What's that? That's not Canada. That's just consumerism in a different country. I wanted to interact with Canada, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do what everybody else does in Canada. When they have a lake, they fish. So I went fishing for a week, and I thought, well, it's all right, but I feel a bit sorry for the fish, to be honest, because A, they're hard to catch, but B, well, I don't really want to catch fish particularly. I mean, on the odd occasion, that'd be okay, but... And then you catch a fish, and so what? And so I hit upon the idea of painting, of doing art. And so I went to some classes and I got some instruction and I learned to paint. So now, when I'm in Canada, I go out in a little boat, I put an anchor down, tie a rock to a tree, tie a rope to a tree, put a stone down. I find myself a little spot and I paint a picture. Now, the painting of the picture is the value of the experience. What the picture looks like is not really the outcome I'm after. Okay? I want to interact with Canada. I want to be where I am. And so when you're painting a picture or drawing, you have to look at what you're looking at. And I swear to you, you look at it and you go, yeah. And then you go, oh, actually, that's not what it looks like at all. You go, well, why did I draw that? That's not what that looks like. You've really got to look and you've got to interact. You've got to be where you are. And that has a massive benefit. So if I spend 3 or 4 hours painting on the lake, I feel really, I feel like I've had a Canadian experience. And that's valuable to me. So I found a way to have the experience that's not tied necessarily to an outcome. Although, I've got a bit better over the years, so I have pictures on the walls. That's a nice thing. It reminds me of Canada. And also it's nice to, be a bit of an artist. Look what I found on this little island. It's a vertebrae from a fish. There are ospreys here in the trees, and they catch fish and obviously come on the island to eat them. So what we want to recognize is this. Your uniqueness is the object of the exercise. Being unique, experiencing your unique life, and being okay with who you are is the object of the exercise. What you do is a byproduct. Whether you achieve great things or whether you just have a perfectly ordinary life, that's a byproduct, right? It doesn't matter. It's absolutely fine. We accept who we are because we are who we are. And you could, I always put it like this, right? You've got two choices. You can accept who you are or you can not accept who you are. Well, if you don't accept who you are you somebody different? No, of course you're not. You have to accept, you don't have to accept who you are, and I appreciate that many people don't accept who they are. But nevertheless, that's what we're aiming for. To be who you are, to recognize and own your uniqueness, and to be okay with that. To have your strengths and have your weaknesses, to do what you want to do because you want to do it, and that's okay. Don't do what you don't want to do, and that's okay. Let's flatten this spiky and unwieldy internal landscape so that it's more useful to us and it's less difficult to navigate. You're perfectly fine as you are. Work towards believing it. Because the alternative is depression and anxiety. And that doesn't change who you are, it just means that the experience of being who you are is a lot more difficult than it needs to be. So, I know it can sound simple, but it's a lifetime of work to accept who you are, to appreciate who you are, and to enjoy being who you are, doing the things that you want to do because you want to do them. Not because you must, you have to, you're driven, your self-esteem is contingent upon it. No, do what you do because you want to do it, and be accepting and comfortable with who you are because you're unique. And there'll never be another you. And I find that interesting, that's a nice concept. There will never be another you, so enjoy being you. I hope you find this interesting. Please like and subscribe. I've got quite a fierce paddle back because the wind's in my face, and I've got to go around this island, round the headland, and then I'll be in the wind, and fortunately the wind will blow me down the rest of the lake back to where I'm going to. So let's complete the rest of the journey.